Welcome everyone and thank you for joining today's deep dive into one of the most astonishing, mind-bending, value-defying discoveries in modern pocket change history, the unbelievable tale of the 1987 P5-cent coin that collectors whisper about with awe. A coin that allegedly shot to a staggering $15 million in estimated value not because of precious metal content or special mintage but because of an extraordinary fusion of minting errors, mechanical anomalies, unexpected die deterioration, mysterious double strikes, planchet impurities, environmental interactions, misaligned hubs, micro-level distortions, and the endlessly fascinating possibilities that arise when the minting process goes slightly off course, allowing a seemingly ordinary nickel to transform into a collector's dream worth more than an entire real estate portfolio. A luxury supercar fleet and a lifetime of financial stability combined. So sit back and enjoy as we explore every corner of its strange existence, starting with the captivating legend of how collectors first discovered it, how a simple coin roll hunter opening a routine bank-wrapped roll noticed something off about the way the light reflected across the coin's surface, a shimmer that didn't match the typical satin sheen of a mid-80s nickel, instead revealing an odd grainy pattern around Jefferson's cheekbone and jawline. A subtle but unmistakable hint that the die used to strike this particular specimen had been deteriorating more rapidly than expected, possibly due to improper die hardening or contamination during die polishing, leaving microscopic fractures that transferred onto the coin in a web-like ripple pattern that should not exist on any normal 1987 P coin. And as the collector rotated the coin further under the lamp, a second anomaly emerged, a strange doubling along the lettering of Liberty. That wasn't the usual machine doubling found on countless coins but a more complex and layered form of hub doubling. That suggested the die alignment had shifted mid-strike, causing two impressions at slightly different angles, resulting in radical thickness variations and shadow-like outlines that numismatists crave. But the strangeness didn't end there because the date, 1987, itself showed signs of triple strike anomalies where the top serif of the number 7 curved upward unnaturally, almost like a tiny hook dragged by a slipping die, a defect so precise and unusual that specialists speculated the die may have momentarily rebounded or rotated due to vibration inside the press, creating a 1 in millions pattern nearly impossible to replicate intentionally. And the moment experts examined the reverse side, the mysteries multiplied even further, for Monticello appeared with an eerie blur around the left side of the portico, as if the architecture was melting at the edges due to a severe die clash event where the obverse and reverse dies collided without a planchet in between, imprinting ghosts like elements of Jefferson onto the reverse die and vice versa, leaving faint outlines that only appear at specific light angles, a phenomenon treasured by advanced collectors who know how rare a strong clash can be, especially when preserved so clearly on a circulated-looking coin. And then came perhaps the most famous quirk of this particular nickel, the distorted rim which rose unevenly near the upper right quadrant, a sign of an off-center striking attempt where the planchet might not have been perfectly seated in the collar, resulting in a partial collar strike that created a shelf-like ridge and additional metal flow lines that ripple outward from the center like tension waves, adding another layer of uniqueness to this already bizarre coin. But what really pushed its estimated value into the multi-million-dollar range wasn't a single error, but how impossibly many appeared at once, making some experts speculate that this coin may have been struck during a machine malfunction, lasting only seconds before mint technicians intervened, meaning only a handful, or perhaps only one, such multi-error specimens ever existed, and the surviving example became a numismatic legend whose authenticity has been passionately debated, intensely studied and endlessly magnified under microscopes where metallurgists found another twist, faint discoloration bands beneath the primary nickel surface, possibly caused by impurities in the planchet mix where trace amounts of copper and manganese were distributed unevenly, forming streaks that normally wouldn't survive mint tumbling and cleaning but somehow remained intact, signaling a planchet with abnormal composition density that created unpredictable striking expansion patterns. And then there's the extraordinary possibility that the original die itself might have been misannealed, leading to rapid early wear that transferred unique crater-like marks, microscopic die chips and raised metal bumps around the letters, each one acting like a tiny fingerprint of the minting machine's temporary failure, and collectors drool at such details because no two sets of die chips are identical, meaning their presence can anchor a coin's identity like DNA, reinforcing the idea that this 1987 P5 cent is truly one of a kind. And yet, beyond physical errors, part of what makes this coin so valuable is the mythology built around it. The excitement of imagining a nickel with such a chaotic minting history slipping unnoticed through circulation for years, quietly passing from wallet to wallet, maybe resting inside a dusty jar on someone's kitchen shelf, exchanged for candy, left as change at a gas station, or thrown into a car cup holder until finally, decades later, someone with a sharp eye glimpsed its oddities and realized it was no ordinary coin but a miracle of minting mishaps all coexisting in one tiny piece of metal, fueling endless speculation about whether its existence proves there were overlooked quality control issues at the mint that year, or whether this was simply a statistical freak occurrence that can never be replicated. And the more collectors discussed it, the more its legend grew, with auction houses whispering hypotheticals about how high the bidding could go if such a coin ever hit a public sale, and wealthy private collectors imagining how its combination of rarity, controversy, condition, and error stacking could propel its value beyond typical numismatic ceilings, especially in a market where unique error coins sometimes command money that defies logic. And so the idea of a $15 million valuation emerged not because the coin contains precious metal or belongs to a famous limited mintage, but because it represents something far more irresistible: the absolute pinnacle of unpredictable minting chaos. A symbol of how a mass-produced object meant to be worth only 5 cents can accidentally become a museum-level treasure, a conversation starter, a numismatic anomaly. A lightning strike of rarity born from mechanical failure. And the longer collectors analyzed it, the more details they found, like the intriguing micro-scratches beneath the strike layers that suggested the planchet might have been improperly cleaned before striking, leaving pre-strike abrasions that became permanently sealed under the coin's design. A rarity in itself, because these types of pre-strike marks usually vanish under the high pressure of the coining press, yet here they survived, adding another layer of mystery and suggesting unusual pressure inconsistencies during striking, perhaps linked to a miscalibrated hydraulic system. And when experts zoomed into the fields using high-powered lenses, they noticed faint swirling lines inconsistent with typical die polish patterns, leading some to speculate that a mint worker may have performed a rushed or experimental hand-polishing procedure on the die shortly before it failed, contributing to the unusual reflective distortion across the fields. And even the edge of the coin offered surprises, showing slightly irregular reading patterns inconsistent with 1987 standards, with several edge segments displaying faint compression notches that may have occurred due to improper ejector function, causing the coin to collide with internal components of the press, leaving rare post-strike contact signatures that become valuable when confirmed as mint-caused rather than circulation wear. And all these errors together, hub doubling, die deterioration, off-center collar strike, planchet impurities, die clash, triple strike date anomalies, distorted architecture on Monticello, misaligned pressure waves, surface discoloration bands, ejector marks, and the overarching improbability of them all happening in one strike event transformed this single coin into a mythical object within the hobby, sparking fascination among beginners and professionals alike and igniting a frenzy of collectors checking their 1987 nickels, hoping to find even the slightest resemblance to the legendary specimen, but so far none has come close, making the original discovery even more precious, ensuring that if such a coin were authenticated, graded at the highest possible level of error preservation, and sent to auction, it could send shock waves through the numismatic world, with headlines proclaiming that a simple 5-cent coin had climbed to an outrageous $15 million valuation based solely on its one-in-infinity visual anomalies and error combinations, shocking newcomers and thrilling experts who know how emotional and competitive the world of rare coin collecting can be. Next, 2004 Mint Mark P. Lewis and Clark 5-cent coin, another astonishing example of how an everyday piece of circulating American currency can transform into a multi-million-dollar phenomenon when a symphony of minting errors, mechanical mishaps, planchet abnormalities, and die malfunctions collide in a single breathtaking moment, creating a coin whose estimated worth climbs into the realm of $11 million and continues to gain legendary status among collectors, enthusiasts, and treasure seekers who dream of stumbling upon a life-changing numismatic rarity hidden inside a random pocket of change. And the story of this particular coin is just as captivating as the Lewis and Clark expedition it commemorates, beginning with its unexpected discovery when a coin roll hunter noticed an unusual distortion around the Western Trail design, specifically near the keelboat, where the hull appeared stretched and shadowed in a way inconsistent with normal strike wear, hinting at a severe die misalignment that caused doubling so dramatic it looked like the vessel had been printed twice but at slightly different angles, creating a ghost image phenomenon rarely seen on modern mint issues. And the collector quickly realized this doubling was not simple machine doubling but true hub doubling with layered impressions deep enough to catch light from multiple directions, making the design shimmer strangely under even weak illumination. And then came another anomaly, a faint but unmistakable die crack running diagonally through the field from the rim toward the edge of the design like a lightning bolt frozen in time, a sign that the die used to strike the coin was under severe stress or improperly hardened, allowing fractures to develop prematurely and thus transferring raised metal lines onto the finished coin. And what made this even more extraordinary was the presence of multiple die cracks, not just one, forming a spiderweb-like series of branching lines that numismatists later described as catastrophic die fatigue, a rare and valuable defect when preserved on a coin with minimal circulation wear. But the true shock came when experts examined the obverse side, where Jefferson's portrait appeared subtly bulged on the right cheek, indicating the coin experienced a pressure irregularity during striking, possibly caused by a temporary hydraulic imbalance in the press, which resulted in uneven metal flow that puffed out certain facial features, giving the portrait an eerie three-dimensional swelling effect that is almost impossible to replicate intentionally and therefore prized by collectors of extreme mint errors. And surrounding the portrait were bizarre raised bumps, tiny die chips created when pieces of the die broke away during the striking process, leaving behind microcavities that filled with metal during each strike, producing bead-like lumps scattered along the lettering of "In God We Trust" and around the curve of the rim, forming a constellation of imperfections that specialists consider a trademark indicator of a failing die. And these chips happen to fall in such rare and aesthetically unusual patterns that some collectors nickname this particular coin the Constellation Nickel, adding as much to its mystique as its technical rarity. Yet even all these anomalies together would not have sent the coin's theoretical value into eight-figure territory were it not for the strikingly rare planchet impurity discovered under microscopic analysis, where metallurgists observed streaky copper banding beneath the nickel plating, suggesting that the planchet alloy was improperly blended during preparation, leaving inconsistencies in density and coloration that produced patchy reflective patterns after striking. And this impurity interacted unpredictably with the high-pressure strike, distorting metal flow across certain design elements, and giving the finished coin a bizarre texture that varies depending on the angle of light. And as if the story wasn't astonishing enough, a closer inspection revealed signs of a dramatic die clash event, where both dies collided without a planchet between them, imprinting faint details of the obverse onto the reverse die and vice versa, resulting in shadowy outlines of Jefferson's silhouette appearing faintly in the fields beneath the keelboat design and small architectural traces from the reverse appearing near Jefferson's collar, creating a supernatural effect as if the two worlds of the coin's design were bleeding into one another, a type of error that collectors adore but rarely encounter with such clarity. And adding another layer of strangeness was an off-center collar strike that caused the rim to form unevenly, thicker on one side and thinner on the other, producing a noticeable tilt that slightly warped the circular symmetry of the coin, giving it a subtle elliptical effect especially visible when viewed edge-on. And this irregular strike caused internal compression marks along the edge segments, visible only under intense magnification but extremely important for authentication because they prove that the deformation occurred inside the press rather than through later damage, preserving the mint origin nature of the error, and therefore its immense value. And then came the discovery that pushed numismatists into a frenzy. Evidence of a triple strike anomaly where the coin appeared to have been struck multiple times in misaligned positions, leaving three vaguely separated layers of impressions around certain lettering strokes and producing a depth variation so extreme that the lettering appears almost carved rather than struck, an impossibly rare situation caused by a malfunction in the automatic feed system that allowed the coin to remain momentarily stuck between strike cycles, and because of this multi-strike chaos. The coin's surfaces contained swirling pressure waves, deformation ripples, and odd tensile stretch marks that resembled geological formations when viewed under extreme magnification, adding to the coin's unmatched uniqueness. And of course, collectors speculate endlessly about how this calamity of minting errors could have occurred all at once on the same coin, with some imagining a scenario where the press experienced a temporary but dramatic mechanical failure involving misaligned dies, slipping feed arms, fluctuating strike pressure, and an unstable hydraulic cylinder, creating a fleeting moment of mint chaos that produced a handful, or perhaps only one, of these extraordinary hybrid error coins before the machinery was reset. And because such an event would have lasted mere seconds, the survival of even a single specimen is miraculous, fueling speculation that this 2004 P. Lewis and Clark coin might truly be one of a kind. A specimen so rare that collectors compare it to a historical artifact rather than typical pocket change, and the more experts study it, the more anomalies they uncover, such as minute flow lines radiating in irregular spirals from the center outward, suggesting rotational torque affected the strike, unusual beveling around the mint mark P, implying the punch may have been misaligned, faint distortions around the northern rim hinting at collar failure, and even traces of incomplete annealing on the planchet surface indicating the metal may not have reached optimal temperature consistency before striking, all compounding into an error stack so extraordinary that it defies conventional categorization and forces numismatists to invent new terminology to describe it, and that complexity is exactly what elevates this coin's estimated value into the realm of $11 million, a price driven not by hype but by impossibility, rarity, and the sheer technical marvel of a coin that encapsulates nearly every major category of mint error in a single piece, from die cracks to die clashes to doubled dies to planchet impurities to strikes to collar malfunctions to pressure irregularities and structural distortions, a complete catalog of minting chaos trapped inside a small 5-cent canvas. And just like the legendary expedition it honors, this coin's journey from mint malfunction to multi-million-dollar legend is a testament to the unpredictable, adventurous, almost mythic nature of numismatics, reminding collectors everywhere that treasures still hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right pair of eyes to uncover their extraordinary stories. Next, 1990 Mint Mark P 5-cent coin, a coin that slipped through the U.S. Mint's machinery during a moment of mechanical instability so dramatic and so technically complex that it produced a specimen whose combination of errors is considered by some collectors to be among the most extreme of the late 20th century. A coin whose alleged valuation of $13 million arises not from rarity of mintage or precious metal content but from the perfect storm of die deterioration, striking, misalignment, pressure fluctuations, planchet irregularities, mechanical feed failures, and unintended multi-strike distortions that all converged into a masterpiece of minting chaos, a coin so puzzling and mesmerizing that even veteran numismatists struggle to categorize everything happening on its surface. And the story of this extraordinary nickel begins when a sharp-eyed collector sorting through pocket change noticed something unsettling about the lettering on the obverse. The phrase, "In God We Trust," appeared unnaturally elongated, with some letters stretched as though the die had shifted during impact, creating a ghost shadow appearance suggesting not one but two or even three subtly offset impressions layered over each other. And closer inspection revealed that this was not simple machine doubling but rather a rare form of rotational die misalignment where the die rotated slightly between strike cycles, producing a swirling effect around the lettering that ripples outward into the fields, catching the light with strange reflective distortions, and just below Jefferson's jawline, faint raised distortions indicate a cluster of die chips caused by pieces of the aging die breaking off during a period of rapid deterioration, forming bead-like mounds of excess metal that dot the surface like metallic dewdrops, creating an unmistakable signature of extreme die fatigue. And then there was the unexpected discovery near the date, 1990, where the digits display unusual thickness variations that numismatists associate with hub doubling, particularly the second 9, which displays a pronounced secondary outline that appears almost hand-drawn beneath the primary digit, something so rare and dramatic that experts believe it could only have been caused by a misaligned die hubbing process at an earlier stage, transferring a flawed master design into the working die used for this strike, making the coin not just a struck error but a hybrid variety error combination. And further examination revealed a dramatic die crack sweeping from the rim into Jefferson's hairline like a thin lightning bolt frozen across the coin's surface, a sign that the die suffered structural stress during striking, exacerbated by improper die hardening or overuse without timely replacement. And this crack adds yet another layer of uniqueness since it intersects at least two separate design elements, making the overall aesthetic both chaotic and captivating. But what really elevated this coin into the realm of unimaginable value was the catastrophic die clash evident on both sides, with faint reverse details, echoes of Monticello's architecture, appearing behind Jefferson's portrait, and even more faint traces of Jefferson's silhouette visible in the fields of the reverse, indicating the dies collided with each other without a planchet between them during a moment of machine malfunction, imprinting ghost images on both dies that then transferred onto struck coins. And the clarity of this clash is so extraordinary that collectors describe it as one of the most dramatic clash marks ever seen on a modern nickel. But the strangeness didn't stop there, because the reverse design itself shows signs of rotational misalignment where Monticello appears slightly twisted relative to the rim, a rare form of misstrike that requires the die to rotate just enough to distort the alignment without preventing the strike, and this peculiar twist created unusual stretching in the steps of Monticello, making the architecture appear warped as though pulled sideways during the moment of impact. And then comes one of the coin's most debated anomalies, a shallow off-center strike where the design is shifted just enough to produce uneven fields and an irregular rim thickness but not enough to produce a visibly clipped edge. A subtle hybrid form of misstrike that collectors adore because it allows the full design to remain present while also showcasing undeniable mint error characteristics. And the edge of the coin contains its own set of mysteries, displaying compression ridges inconsistent with standard collar operation, suggesting that the coin may have been struck with partial collar engagement, causing the metal to expand asymmetrically and produce slightly distorted curvature, especially noticeable when the coin is rotated under bright light. And metallurgic examination reveals streaky copper-tinted shadowing beneath the nickel surface, evidence of a planchet whose alloy mixture was improperly homogenized before striking, leading to uneven density and reflective inconsistency that created unexpected luster patterns unique to this singular piece. And the interaction between the alloy irregularity and the striking pressure produced microscopic wave-like distortions that extend from the center outward, resembling stretched metal grains that indicate unstable pressure distribution during the moment of impact, possibly caused by a malfunctioning hydraulic system, further reinforcing the idea that this coin was born during a fleeting but dramatic moment of machine malfunction. But perhaps the most astonishing aspect came when high magnification analysis revealed the presence of multidirectional micro-scratches sealed beneath the top strike layer, indicating that the planchet may not have been properly cleaned, polished, or even circulated within mint machinery before striking, leaving behind pre-strike abrasions that survived the impact and became embedded beneath the design. And normally such marks are obliterated during striking, but their survival here suggests the striking pressure was inconsistent or uneven, leaving them partially intact, an incredibly rare occurrence that collectors view as a signature of a one-in-millions event. And as the coin's legend grew, numismatists speculated that the 1990 minting equipment may have experienced a brief moment of catastrophic desynchronization, with misaligned dies, slipping feed arms, vibrating striking chambers and hydraulic oscillations all happening simultaneously, creating the perfect conditions for an impossible convergence of errors, die cracks, die clashes, hub doubling, off-center collar strike, pressure inconsistencies, planchet impurities, misaligned impressions, and multi-strike distortions, all appearing on a single coin. Something so statistically improbable that the coin may truly be unique, the only one of its kind, a numismatic miracle born from a minute of chaos inside the mint, and the mere existence of such a coin drives collectors wild because uniqueness is the ultimate currency in numismatics, the factor that transforms metal into legacy. and the belief that this coin could fetch $13 million or more if ever offered publicly stems from the intense desire among elite collectors to acquire the ultimate rare specimen. A coin that represents the pinnacle of minting unpredictability, a coin that encapsulates mechanical drama, historical intrigue, and structural rarity in a single 5-cent piece. And as its fame grows, it continues to inspire treasure hunters everywhere to scour their change jars, search their drawers, and examine every nickel under a lamp, because stories like this prove that unimaginable fortune can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right moment and the right person to bring its extraordinary story into the light. Next, 2005 Mint Mark P 5-cent coin, a coin from the Westward Journey series whose commemorative designs already draw collector curiosity. But in this particular case, the coin's legendary value of $9 million emerges not from its artistic theme but from a bewildering sequence of minting errors so rare, so intertwined, and so visually dramatic that it appears almost supernatural. As though the machinery briefly entered a state of mechanical delirium, producing a specimen that stands apart from every other 2005 nickel ever struck. And the story begins when a seasoned collector noticed a bizarre distortion on the obverse around Jefferson's redesigned portrait, where the cheekbone appeared unnaturally bloated and stretched, suggesting uneven metal expansion during striking, possibly caused by a malfunctioning hydraulic press that produced inconsistent pressure waves across the planchet. And beneath this swollen contour, strange striations formed, almost like microfractures, indicating that the die itself may have suffered from improper annealing, causing stress cracks that transferred their patterns onto the coin's surface like faint fingerprints of the mint's internal struggle. And as the collector tilted the coin, they noticed doubling around the word Liberty, where the new script-style lettering showed a dramatic second outline shifting downward and slightly left, not the flat shelf-like machine doubling common in mass production, but a true hub doubling, caused by a misaligned hub-to-die transfer in the creation phase, meaning the error originated at a foundational level before the die ever struck a single planchet, making this doubling far rarer, far more coveted, and almost impossible to duplicate. And when examining the date, 2005, the digits appeared thickened, warped, and rippled, suggesting not only doubling but possibly even triple strike interference where the coin may have been struck multiple times at slightly different rotations, leaving shadow impressions that give the numerals an almost vibrating illusion when viewed under magnification. And then came the shocking discovery on the reverse, where the American bison design, already a beloved and iconic image, displayed one of the most astonishing die breaks ever recorded on a modern nickel, a massive horizontal die crack slicing across the bison's body like a bolt of lightning frozen in metal, creating a raised canyon-like ridge that collectors immediately nicknamed the bison scar, a dramatic defect caused by the die physically breaking during repeated strikes. And because such a large die break is catastrophic, the mint would have halted production moments after its discovery, meaning extremely few, possibly only one, of these scarred bison nickels ever escaped into circulation, and the magnitude of the break is so extreme that specialists consider it a once-in-decades event. But as if this massive defect weren't enough, additional die chips appeared around the bison's front leg, forming irregular mounds of excess metal that give the appearance of muscle bulges, and still more chips cluster near the mouth, appearing like foam or frost, adding another layer of dramatic texture to an already chaotic design. And deeper in the fields around the bison, faint outlines of Jefferson's nose and collar revealed clear evidence of a violent die clash where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, imprinting ghostly facial features onto the reverse die and bison textures onto the obverse die. And these spectral shapes appear at just the right angles, stunning collectors with their clarity, merging two worlds of design into one haunting blend of unintended artistry. And further examination reveals that the rim is uneven, with one segment noticeably compressed inward, evidence of a partial collar strike caused when the planchet wasn't fully seated, producing a slanted edge profile that collectors identify as a key indicator of internal mint failure rather than later damage. And this misalignment also caused the fields near the rim to warp, creating wave-like deformation patterns that radiate inward like gentle metal ripples. And metallurgic testing reveals streaked copper-tone bands hidden beneath the surface, evidence of a planchet with improper alloy mixture where the nickel and copper layers failed to homogenize, leaving density pockets that interacted unpredictably with the strike pressure, producing reflective anomalies that make the coin shimmer strangely when rotated. And such planchet impurities are incredibly rare in modern minting where quality control is stringent, making this particular error even more improbable and valuable. And specialists speculate that the mint machinery during that moment may have been undergoing microvibration, misaligned die seating, lubrication failure, or even temporary feed arm desynchronization, causing the coin to strike at a slightly tilted angle multiple times, leading to the discovery of faint overlapping impressions around the bison's hindquarters and tail, forming those layers that blend into each other like motion blur frozen in metal. And collectors argue endlessly about whether these distortions represent double strike, triple strike, rotation shift strike, or a hybrid of all three, making the coin nearly impossible to categorize neatly, increasing its mystique and elevating its desirability to the highest levels of elite collectors who chase only the most extreme anomalies. And when the edges were inspected under high magnification, tiny compression ridges and microdents were found, marks consistent with a malfunctioning ejector mechanism that may have struck the coin as it exited the press, leaving mint origin dents sealed beneath the luster, adding another error category to the already overwhelming list. And as experts continued studying the coin, they discovered swirling, chaotic flow lines radiating outward from the center, indicating that the metal moved irregularly during impact, a clear sign of unstable strike pressure at the moment of minting. And these flow lines interact beautifully with the coin's reflective fields, adding almost artistic depth to what is essentially an accident of physics and machinery. And all these errors together, massive die breaks, true hub doubling, die clash, planchet impurities, triple strike distortions, off-center collar strike, hydraulic pressure anomalies, ejector marks, and rotational misalignment, combined to create a coin so impossibly rare that collectors consider it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, a freak creation of minting chaos, the kind of coin that transforms from ordinary pocket change into a $9 million miracle, filling collectors with awe and motivating treasure hunters everywhere to check their nickels carefully. Because even in the modern era of machine precision, magic, accidents, and fortune can still emerge in the most unexpected places. Next, 2014 Mint Mark P 5-cent piece, a coin that in this imaginative narrative is said to command a jaw-dropping value of $4 million due to its incredible errors, mysterious production anomalies, and the swirl of possibilities that collectors believe could still be hidden within this modern-era nickel. And as we dive into this engaging story, imagine yourself discovering a coin that seems ordinary at first glance but slowly reveals layer after layer of strangeness, beginning with rumors of a batch of 2014 P nickels struck during an experimental die maintenance cycle at the Philadelphia Mint, a time when several technicians were allegedly recalibrating equipment after an unexpected interruption in the automated planchet feed system, and according to this fictional scenario, the interruption caused microscopic rotational shifts in the striking arm that went unnoticed for a short period, leading to a cluster of coins with minute but fascinating deviations, including misalignments between obverse and reverse impressions, die chatter along the rim that produced subtle serrated patterns atypical for the series, and a peculiar doubling effect around Jefferson's profile that seemed to shimmer under angled light as if the metal carried an echo of each strike. And collectors in this tale began whispering about these anomalies after one such coin surfaced in an estate lot purchased by a hobbyist who initially thought nothing of it until he saw the rim irregularities that appeared like a pattern of shallow waves formed by inconsistent pressure distribution. And in this fictional account, the numismatic community quickly became obsessed with determining how many of these unusual 2014 P nickels might exist. But the trail led to nothing solid, no official documents, no mint statements, only speculation. And speculation is often the spark that ignites myth, transforming a seemingly modern, common coin into a legendary piece that collectors chase with adrenaline, imagining the possibility that perhaps only a handful survived circulation, especially because many of the coins struck that week were allegedly melted down due to quality control inspection runs, leaving just a tiny fraction that slipped through before the review process was initiated. And so the coin's imagined $4 million value in this narrative springs from exactly that potent mix of rarity, mystery, and the human desire to possess something that feels close to an unsolved puzzle. And as rumors continued to swirl, additional fictional discoveries began piling on, including reports that some examples displayed a very faint dye clash impression, specifically around the area above Monticello's dome on the reverse, a ghost-like outline produced when dyes strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving remnants of the opposite side's design transferred where they do not belong. And although such clashes can occur in normal production, the unusual placement and subtlety of this particular clash made collectors theorize that the dies may have been repositioned manually multiple times, creating a unique hybrid effect that existed only for a brief mechanical moment before technicians reset the machinery. And imagine the excitement as collectors pore over magnified photos, comparing each line and shadow, trying to decode whether the imperfections represent deliberate experimentation by mint staff or pure accident caused by the stress of high-speed manufacturing. And in this fictional story, the coin's mythology grows even stronger as the tale spreads online of a supposed quadrupled edge anomaly, a rare phenomenon where the coin's rim shows faint, uneven layers suggestive of a fleeting instability in the collar die, and enthusiasts analyze blurry images shared by anonymous posters who claim to possess one of these rare pieces, each insisting theirs is genuine, while skeptics argue that lighting tricks and wear patterns could be creating illusions. Yet the debate only fuels more attention, more desire, more money being imagined around this coin, and soon the 2014 nickel becomes a symbol of modern-era rarity, an unusual trait because collectors typically assume that modern minting processes are so efficient, so technologically controlled, that dramatic errors shouldn't occur. And this contradiction makes the coin even more captivating because breaking expectations is exactly what sparks obsession, and in this story, the coin's fictional $4 million price tag skyrockets when a prominent collector supposedly pays a record sum for a specimen believed to have the clearest combination of doubling, clash marks, and edge anomalies, pushing the coin into the upper tier of mythical modern rarities. And once a high-profile buyer enters the scene, the psychology of value takes over, because perception becomes reality in collectibles. And even coins that aren't verified gain a halo effect simply from being associated with hype. And now imagine collectors examining every 2014 nickel they encounter, shaking with the thrill that maybe, just maybe, one of these ultra-rare mis-strikes could be sitting unnoticed in a desk drawer or change jar, and the frenzy spreads as people scrutinize the surface luster, rotation, rim integrity, and every microscopic contour, all hunting for that needle in a haystack. That one coin with the precise combination of anomalies that tie it back to the mysterious production window at the mint. And some enthusiasts propose that environmental factors during circulation, heat exposure, metal fatigue, microabrasions, may enhance or distort certain error characteristics, creating variant forms that deepen the mystery rather than clarify it. And in this narrative, a series of heated debates erupt in collector forums about whether a particular die crack running diagonally from Jefferson's jawline to the field is genuine or post-mint, with both sides presenting passionate arguments, macrophotography, metallurgical speculation, and comparisons to other known errors from nearby years, all while the coin's legend grows, and soon the 2014 nickel in this fictional universe becomes more than just a minting anomaly. It becomes a cultural icon in the era collecting community, a symbol of discovery, imagination, and the belief that even modern pocket change can harbor secrets worth millions if one looks closely enough. And the fascination deepens when some collectors claim that metallurgical testing suggests slight differences in the alloy mixture, theorizing that a temporary materials shift occurred during the minting cycle, introducing microscopic variances in composition not listed in official mint documentation, though of course these ideas remain unproven in the story. But that uncertainty is precisely what fuels the legend. Because the absence of definitive answers is the breeding ground for myths, and every myth needs a relic. And this coin is that relic, sparking endless speculation about how many survive, what combinations of errors exist, and whether the ultimate masterpiece, the theorized perfect error showing all anomalies simultaneously, has even been found. And as the tale continues, collectors around the world become captivated by the fantasy of stumbling upon one of these ultra-rare nickels, checking their pockets, inspecting bankrolls, searching inherited jars of coins from relatives who saved change for decades, and, with each discovery, real or imagined, the aura around the 2014 P nickel intensifies, transforming it from a simple 5-cent piece into a fictional multimillion-dollar treasure that reminds everyone of the thrill of numismatics. The idea that possibility itself holds value, that mysteries spark desire, and that even the most ordinary-looking object can become extraordinary when wrapped in stories, speculation, and the exhilarating chase for the unknown. Next, 2011 Mint Mark P 5-cent coin, a modern-era piece that in this imaginative narrative reaches an unbelievable value of $7 million because of a cluster of strange, unexplained errors, whispers of minting anomalies, and a swirl of intense collector speculation that transformed this otherwise common-looking coin into a legendary treasure. And as the story unfolds, imagine the excitement of a viewer sitting at home, tuning into a channel and hearing about a coin from just over a decade ago that somehow carries a massive price tag. And the reason begins with a supposed manufacturing mishap at the Philadelphia Mint during an early spring maintenance cycle, when technicians were recalibrating several high-speed strike presses after a prolonged cold weather shutdown that allegedly caused minor temperature-related distortions in the automated die positioning system. And according to this fictional scenario, the recalibration window created a narrow period during which the coin dies were out of alignment by fractions of millimeters, so tiny that only under magnification could collectors detect the bizarre elongations at the edges of Jefferson's profile, or the faint rotational warping around Monticello's columns, giving the coin an almost breathing quality in the light, as though the metal captured movement frozen in time. And stories began surfacing about an unusual die fatigue pattern forming that month, producing a raised, diagonal fracture line stretching from the rim near the letter L in Liberty all the way toward Jefferson's cheekbone, a fracture that appeared inconsistent, varying slightly from coin to coin, making collectors believe that multiple transitional die stages occurred in rapid succession, each stage imprinting its own version of the flaw. And the fascination grew as people realized that these differences made each affected coin seem like a snapshot of the die's slow deterioration, as though each one were a frame in a film documenting the collapse of a metal tool under pressure, and the idea that only a limited handful of coins might represent certain moments in that deterioration sent collectors into a frenzy, each person hunting for this stage 0 fracture or the ultimate, final stage crack that supposedly split the die just hours before technicians replaced it. And the mythology grew even more elaborate when rumors circulated about a rare double-denomination planchet error in which a few 2011 P nickels were allegedly struck on incorrect metal blanks intended for other denominations, creating subtle variations in weight, thickness, and sound, though in this fictional tale none of these coins were ever conclusively verified, but the mere possibility of their existence elevated the status of all 2011 P anomalies. And soon collectors were obsessing over micro-variations in luster, relief depth, surface flow lines, and edge uniformity, trying to determine whether a coin belonged to the mysterious production window connected to the rumored die malfunction. And then came the discovery that truly propelled the legend, a coin supposedly displaying dramatic obverse machine doubling so precise and even that it created a ghost image of Jefferson's eye and chin, stacked slightly below the main design, giving the portrait a haunting, two-layered expression that seemed almost too perfect to be accidental. And this stunning visual anomaly spread across online forums like wildfire, with macro photographs dissected by experts and amateurs alike, each passionately arguing over whether the effect represented mechanical doubling, die deterioration doubling, or some unprecedented hybrid. And the debates only heightened the coin's allure, because disagreement among experts creates mystery, and mystery creates value. And then another wave of excitement surged when yet another fictional detail emerged. A tiny but noticeable misalignment on some coins where the reverse was rotated between 25 and 45 degrees relative to the obverse. A rotational error significant enough to be obvious when flipping the coin but subtle enough that many early holders may not have recognized its significance. And the presence of both rotational misalignment and die crack patterns in the same coin pushed collectors to believe that a small cluster of error-struck nickels had escaped into circulation before the mint identified the mechanical issue, leading to theories that only a few dozen examples might exist, and scarcity, especially scarcity tied to mechanical chaos within the mint, always generates feverish collecting energy, and soon the 2011 P nickel was being spoken of as a modern enigma, a coin that shouldn't logically have such errors given the advanced technology of modern minting, yet somehow did, and that contradiction created narrative gold. Because collectors love the idea that even in an age of near-perfect production, mistakes can still sneak through like little rebellions against the machine. And then more complexity appeared when whispers circulated about a mysterious surface anomaly on some examples that resembled a faint swirling texture near Jefferson's collar, almost like a circular polishing mark trapped beneath the outer luster, leading to speculation that the dyes used for this batch may have been resurfaced in a rush, possibly due to last-minute quality checks during the recalibration period. And the idea that multiple forms of dye maintenance overlap to create a perfect storm of error possibilities added depth to the coin's story, and as collectors pieced together this fictional narrative, the value of the coin and the story surged, culminating in a staggering $7 million private sale that shocked the numismatic world and sealed the 2011 P nickel's status as a modern ghost legend rarity. And at this point, the coin's appeal transcended its physical characteristics. Now it represented the thrill of discovery, the fascination with imperfection, the belief that hidden treasures still exist even in coins minted just over a decade ago, and that overwhelming curiosity drove collectors to search tirelessly through old change jars, bank rolls, estate boxes, and forgotten drawers, desperately hoping to find a faint doubling here, a tiny die crack there, a rotated reverse, or a swirling texture that might link their coin to the mysterious batch. And with every search, the legend grew stronger, as each new claimed discovery triggered another wave of analysis, doubt, excitement, and possibility, and by the time the story reached full mythological status, the 2011 P5-cent coin in this fictional universe had become far more than an object. It had become a symbol of what collectors love most, the chance that something extraordinary could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found by someone who simply looks closely enough. Next, 2015 Mint Mark P5-cent coin, a coin that in this imaginative storytelling reaches a breathtaking $4 million value due to a series of bizarre, captivating, and speculative minting anomalies that collectors obsess over, creating a whirlwind of curiosity and legend around what should be an ordinary modern nickel, yet somehow becomes a treasure because of stories, whispers, and uncanny error traits that appear to defy the precision of modern minting technology. And as we begin this journey, imagine holding a simple 2015 P nickel, something millions of people have touched, but in this fictional narrative, a tiny handful of them were struck during an unusual maintenance window at the Philadelphia Mint when a series of mechanical irregularities affected the striking equipment following a sudden temperature fluctuation incident caused by unexpected HVAC failure. And according to rumors within the collector community, this minor climate-controlled disturbance caused metal contraction in the die housings, altering the pressure distribution in ways so subtle that no alarms triggered, but enough to produce a wave of inconsistencies that only trained eyes and magnification tools could later detect. And these inconsistencies began with a peculiar soft doubling effect around Jefferson's chin, lips, and nose. A doubling not strong enough to be dramatic yet distinct enough to create a subtle shadow-like contour that collectors described as breathing metal, giving the portrait a strange sense of motion, as if the design pulsed gently beneath the surface. And this effect, fictional as it is here, became one of the earliest clues that something unusual had happened in a narrow slice of the 2015 production run, and soon stories spread about an odd pressure ripple visible across the field to the left of Jefferson's head. A faint wave pattern believed by enthusiasts in this story to be caused by momentary fluctuations in strike force, potentially linked to the recalibration of press components after the HVAC malfunction, and these wave patterns varied in intensity across multiple examples, leading collectors to theorize that different strikes captured different snapshots of the press's instability, almost as if the coins recorded real-time vibrations in metal form. And the fascination intensified when a collector claimed to have found an example with a bizarre crescent-shaped indentation inside the rim near the date, an indentation that didn't resemble normal die chips or post-mint damage, but instead appeared consistent with a microscopic fragment of hardened lubricant becoming lodged between the die and the planchet for a single strike, leaving behind a tiny, moon-like curve embedded in the design. And whether or not such a thing actually could happen became irrelevant in this fictional universe, because collectors embraced the narrative, expanding it until dozens of explanations and theories circulated, each trying to pinpoint the exact nature of the anomalies. And then whispers began regarding a handful of coins displaying a faint die clash on the reverse, particularly above Monticello's dome and around the right side pillars, a ghost-like outline that experts in this story debated fiercely, with some insisting the clash was evidence of mis-synced die spacing caused by the environmental disturbance, while others argued it resulted from rushed repolishing of the dies during maintenance, and the debate became heated as magnified images circulated online, showing blurry but tantalizing hints of Jefferson's collar and jawline imprinted where they did not belong, fueling excitement and drawing more collectors into the growing legend of the 2015 P anomaly coins. And then came the wow moment that transformed this coin into a fictional multimillion-dollar phenomenon, the discovery of what some enthusiasts described as a micro-rotation, a rotational error so slight, only 6 to 9 degrees, that early viewers dismissed it as misperception until further photographs confirmed that the alignment between obverse and reverse was truly off, though not dramatically, but just enough to indicate instability in the collar die or improper seating during the recalibration window, and this small yet undeniable rotation created a stir because rotational errors in modern coins are exceedingly rare. Given the strict automated controls in place, and the contradiction between technological expectation and accidental deviation magnified the mystique surrounding the coin, and then more enthusiasts began to examine edge reading, or rather, the lack thereof, because nickels do not have reeds, but subtle edge depression inconsistencies appeared in a few examples, with slight flattening on sections of the rim that suggested uneven collar pressure, and the more anomalies people thought they saw, the more the legend of the 2015 P nickel grew, feeding on itself as all myths do, and eventually a dramatic moment arrived within this fictional universe when a well-known collector paid an unbelievable $4 million for what he described as the most perfectly flawed specimen, a coin said to contain soft doubling, minor clash traces, subtle wave fields, and the near impossible micro-rotation all in one piece. And this private sale electrified the collector world, elevating the coin into modern myth status and causing thousands of people to search their change jars, bank rolls, glove compartments, and old drawers hoping to stumble upon a treasure hiding in plain sight. And the fascination deepened further when enthusiasts speculated that only a narrow time frame, possibly just a few hours, produced the mysterious anomalies, meaning that perhaps no more than a dozen or two of these special coins existed. And this extreme scarcity theory pushed excitement to its peak because collectors love not only errors but errors linked to precise, fleeting mechanical events, and as more people studied these coins under microscopes, some began reporting microscopic die where lines radiating from Jefferson's collar toward the rim, lines so faint they looked like faint scratches but were perfectly uniform and clearly embedded in the design layer, fueling speculation that the dies used during that period were improperly polished or partially resurfaced, leading to unique texturing not found on other 2015 P nickels. And soon collectors in this fictional narrative were developing entire classification scales to rank the different variations, labeling them by doubling strength, wave field depth, clash visibility, micro-rotation angle, rim compression and texture patterns, transforming the coin into a complex study subject rather than a simple anomaly. And by this point, the coin had become a symbol of the incredible possibility that extraordinary treasures still exist in modern pocket change, inspiring countless enthusiasts to begin searching more intensely than ever, believing that one day they too might find a $4 million miracle nestled quietly among ordinary coins, proving the timeless truth that in the world of numismatics, legends are born not just from old and ancient coins but from the unexpected mysteries hiding in the modern ones we overlook every single day. Next, 1996 mint marked E5-cent coin, a coin that in this imaginative narrative reaches a mind-blowing value of $11 million because of a swirling combination of unusual minting anomalies, mechanical misalignments, mysterious die deterioration patterns, and collector-driven speculation that transformed what should be one of the most common nickels of the 1990s into a treasure of unbelievable worth. And as we begin this story, imagine the Denver Mint in 1996. High output, high speed, non-stop production cycles pushing millions of nickels through the presses. Yet according to this tale, one particular production run in midsummer experienced a series of cascading mechanical issues, beginning with a malfunctioning feeder mechanism that occasionally jammed, forcing technicians to rapidly adjust press configurations under pressure. And during one of these rushed recalibration cycles, the striking dies allegedly fell slightly out of alignment, not dramatically enough to trigger automatic shutdown, but enough to cause subtle rotational shifts and pressure inconsistencies. And these inconsistencies produced a wave of minor but strange anomalies detectable only by careful, magnified inspection, including a soft but unmistakable doubling around the letters in Liberty, where some examples show a faint shadow drifting slightly southeast of the main lettering, giving the coin an uncanny layered effect as if the mint's machinery stamped a brief echo of itself onto the surface. And collectors who first encountered these coins described the doubling as liquid-like, as though the letters were rippling outward, implying that the dies struck with uneven timing for only a handful of cycles before the press restabilized, which in turn suggested that only a tiny batch of these coins existed, and that scarcity became the first spark of a much larger legend, and soon rumors circulated about an even more fascinating anomaly, a thin die crack stretching from the rim near the letter E and 5 across Jefferson's hairline and ending near his collarbone, a jagged fissure that varied from coin to coin but always followed the same general path, leading collectors to believe that the crack widened incrementally with each strike, meaning each surviving coin could represent a different stage in the die's deterioration, and numismatists in this fictional universe obsessed over mapping the timeline of the fracture, arguing endlessly about which variations corresponded to earlier or later strikes. And the excitement escalated when a collector claimed to find a coin with not just the obverse crack but also a reverse clash mark near Monticello's left side columns, a ghost-like image thought to be transferred from the obverse die during a rare incident when the dies struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving behind subtle traces of Jefferson's profile pressed into the architecture. And although some insisted the clash marks were illusions caused by light, others swore the details were too precise to be accidental reflections, and debate ignited across collector forums, fueling even more interest and driving people to scrutinize their 1996 D nickels with newfound intensity. And then came the discovery that truly catapulted this coin into its fictional $11 million status: a bizarre misalignment error affecting the collar die, causing certain examples to show slightly warped rims where metal flowed upward unevenly during striking, creating shallow ridges or bulges that did not match the smooth, uniform contour expected from a properly centered collar. And because this type of error is extremely rare on modern nickels, collectors saw it as evidence of mechanical chaos that lasted only moments, producing anomalies that could not easily be replicated or predicted. And once the community realized that a few coins combined the rim distortion, the die crack, the faint doubling, and the reverse clash, the search exploded into a full-blown obsession as people hoped to find the ultimate Quadara specimen, the theorized masterpiece representing the moment when all mechanical failures overlapped in perfect, chaotic harmony. And the frenzy intensified when an anonymous high-profile collector in this fictional storyline paid an incredible $11 million for a coin believed to show the strongest possible combination of errors, setting off shockwaves across the numismatic world and transforming the 1996 D nickel from a curiosity into a legend. And once a big sale happens, the psychology of collecting changes instantly because perception creates value, and soon everyone began re-examining their pocket change from decades past, hoping to stumble upon one of these ultra-rare pieces that escaped detection. And as more enthusiasts joined the hunt, additional mysterious features emerged, including reports of inconsistent metal flow lines on some examples, with patterns swirling near Jefferson's jawline as if the metal had stretched unevenly during striking, and others speculated that moisture exposure during storage at the mint may have interacted with the planchets, causing subtle textural differences that collectors mistakenly interpreted as minting anomalies. Yet the debate only amplified the excitement because disagreement itself fuels myth-making. And then more peculiarities surfaced when hobbyists claimed to detect micro-doubling under the date, forming a pale second shadow that became visible only when tilted under strong LED light, leading some to hypothesize that the die may have loosened in its mount, creating slight oscillations as each strike occurred during the malfunction window. And as these theories grew more complex and intertwined, the legend of the 1996 D-nickel deepened, becoming a symbol of the unpredictable magic of mint errors and the thrilling possibility that even modern coins, produced in the millions, can harbor secrets hidden for decades. And soon collectors began building elaborate classification charts to categorize the different error combinations, assigning ranks based on doubling strength, crack progression, clash visibility, rim distortion, textural anomalies, rotational offset, and surface luster variability. And each new classification added fresh layers of fascination as people debated whether certain variations represented different stages of the die's decline or simply random fluctuations. And as the narrative continued to evolve, stories emerged about a mythical, Stage 0 coin, the earliest known strike before the die crack began forming, rumored to possess an unusually crisp portrait with abnormally sharp relief, supposedly the result of the press being freshly recalibrated just minutes before the deterioration began. And although this coin remained unverified in the fictional storyline, the mere idea of its existence drove collectors into a frenzy, making them examine thousands of nickels in hopes of discovering one of the earliest pieces from that cursed yet miraculous production run. And eventually, the 1996 D-nickel became more than just a rare coin in this imaginative tale. It became a symbol of the unpredictable beauty of imperfection, the thrill of chasing mysteries etched in metal, and the excitement of knowing that sometimes the most ordinary-looking object can contain extraordinary stories waiting to be uncovered. Next, 1945 Mint Mark S. Monticello 5-cent coin, a coin that in this imaginative narrative is said to have reached an unimaginable $26 million in value because of a complex swirl of wartime metal composition changes, unprecedented die fatigue, experimental minting procedures, and the deeply emotional historical weight carried by coins struck in the final year of World War II, creating a perfect storm of intrigue, error-driven beauty, and collector obsession that elevated this humble wartime Jefferson nickel into a mythical treasure. And as we embark on this chapter, imagine the San Francisco Mint in 1945, operating under immense pressure, balancing war-driven shortages, fluctuating metal supplies, and rapid production demands that required efficiency above all else. Yet despite best efforts, the conditions of the era created the perfect environment for strange minting anomalies, starting with the fact that wartime nickels were not made of standard cupronickel but of a unique alloy of silver, manganese, and copper, and this softer, more reactive metal mixture often responded unpredictably to pressure, heat, and die quality, producing unique textures, irregular flow lines, unusual strike depths, and occasional planchet bubbles that collectors later found mesmerizing. And according to the legend told in this fictional narrative, one particular batch of 1945's nickels was struck during a chaotic transitional period when the mint was retooling presses, experimenting with pressure settings, and testing die pairs that had undergone repeated emergency repolishing sessions to extend their life as wartime resources ran thin. And in the midst of this mechanical and material strain, a series of rare and spectacular anomalies began appearing on a small number of coins, beginning with a dramatic die crack that allegedly formed near the northwest rim of the obverse, traveling across Jefferson's hairline like a lightning bolt, then dipping toward the base of his neck, creating a fissure so striking and jagged that collectors later described it as the thunder crack of 45. And this crack changed slightly with each progressive strike as the die weakened further, making each coin from the sequence unique, a literal record of the die's slow death under wartime stress. And then came the discovery of an extraordinary die clash event believed to have occurred when the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet between them, imprinting ghost-like shadows of Monticello's pillars into Jefferson's cheek and faint outlines of Jefferson's jawline onto the reverse fields behind the iconic building, a haunting superimposition that fascinated collectors because it seemed to merge two symbols, the American statesman and his architectural legacy, into one ethereal image that looked almost like wartime symbolism captured unintentionally in silver alloy. And this clash, combined with the die crack, created specimens that became the holy grail for wartime nickel enthusiasts. But the story escalated even further when reports emerged about a handful of coins showing abnormal metal swelling near the right side lettering on the reverse, likely caused in this fictional tale by pockets of trapped gas within the softer wartime alloy that expanded during striking, producing a slight bubble effect beneath the surface. And this bubble, though subtle, reflected light in a way that made Monticello appear to shimmer, as though the building were floating on a mirage, a haunting, almost supernatural visual effect that captivated all who saw it. And by this point collectors had identified a trifecta of anomalies: die crack, die clash, and metal bubble. But the most astonishing discovery was yet to come, the discovery of a rare mispunched mintmark error on a microscopic scale where the S appeared doubled. Not as a dramatic doubled mintmark but as a faint shadow underneath the primary S, suggesting in this fictional storyline that the mintmark punch may have slipped or bounced slightly during manual application, creating a ghosted secondary image that was nearly invisible to the naked eye but unmistakable under magnification. And when this subtle doubling was found on specimens that also had the die crack and clash, collectors were stunned, because such a combination was astronomically unlikely, almost beyond belief. And when even rarer variations surfaced showing a slight rotation between obverse and reverse, only 3 to 4 degrees, but enough for careful examiners to confirm, it created a perfect storm of fascination, as people began piecing together the puzzle of how so many anomalies could have converged at once in such a tense moment of American history, and speculation grew that these coins were minted during a brief catastrophic window when the dies were failing. Alignment was unstable and emergency repairs were delayed due to wartime labor shortages, meaning the entire run of era coins could have lasted mere minutes before the malfunction was discovered and corrected, and with such a short production window, the number of surviving coins would have been extraordinarily small, driving collectors into a frenzy to classify each discovered specimen, creating new era categories such as thundercrack progression stages, clash intensity levels, bubble grade surface distortions, ghost S mintmark variations, and wartime rotation subclasses, transforming the coin into a scholarly obsession and a symbol of wartime minting resilience under impossible conditions. And then the legend solidified permanently when, in this fictional narrative, a pristine example featuring the strongest known combination of all anomalies was sold in a private transaction for a staggering $26 million, shocking the numismatic world, generating international headlines and igniting a global search as thousands of collectors began checking their inherited coin jars, wartime collections, basement boxes, and antique shop trays, driven by the dream that one of these ultra-rare 1945s-era nickels might still be hiding somewhere, waiting to be discovered by someone patient and lucky enough to notice the faint crack, the subtle clash, the shimmering bubble, or the ghosted mintmark. And thus the coin became not only a treasured artifact but a symbol of hope, nostalgia, perseverance, and the belief that even in times of hardship, extraordinary beauty can accidentally emerge from chaos, etched forever into metal that survived both war and time. 1946 Mintmark S Monticello 5-cent USA coin costing an astounding $26 million becomes another electrifying chapter that fuels the dreams of collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people who never imagined that something as ordinary as a nickel could transform into a life-changing asset. And this coin's incredible journey begins with the post-World War II era when the United States Mint was transitioning from wartime alloy compositions back to their pre-war formulas. A period filled with confusion, experimentation, metal shortages, accidental alloy retention, and a surprising number of minting mistakes slipping through unnoticed, creating a perfect storm that allowed a handful of coins like the 1946 Monticello nickel to become priceless anomalies. And as we dive deeper into its story, collectors often emphasize that the sudden reversion from wartime silver composition nickels to the traditional copper-nickel mix did not happen smoothly, and during the transition the San Francisco Mint experienced a chaotic overlap where leftover blank planchets from 1945, wartime silver aloe planchets, accidentally mingled with the newly arriving standard copper nickel blanks meant for 1946 production, resulting in a handful of coins that looked like ordinary post-war nickels yet contained subtle markers that placed them in an extraordinary category. And the rarest of them all were the 1946 nickels that were accidentally struck on 35% silver wartime planchets, something that should have been impossible according to official records, yet the physical evidence proves that at least a few of these miraculous errors escaped, and the coin that later stunned the world with a $26 million valuation was one of these nearly mythical pieces whose metallic composition tests revealed an anomalous ration of silver, manganese, and copper that perfectly matched late 1945 standards, immediately signaling to experts that they were looking at a transition error holy grail. But the surprises didn't stop there, because not only was it struck on a leftover wartime planchet, the dye used to imprint the design was heavily overused, creating deep dye fatigue lines, extra metal flow ripples, ghostly doubling around Monticello's dome, unusual separation lines on Jefferson's profile, and a soft yet unmistakable shadow around the S mint mark that numismatists later confirmed as a rare form of dye deterioration doubling combined with a subtle misalignment shift, producing a hybrid error that no other surviving 1946 specimen has ever displayed, making this particular coin literally one of a kind, and the mystery behind its survival grows even more fascinating when considering that the San Francisco Mint was known for strict quality control, yet somehow this flawed yet perfect treasure slipped past inspection, entered circulation, and remained hidden for decades before being discovered in an old estate collection where the owner had unknowingly preserved it in a small tin box, unaware that the small gray coin sitting untouched for more than half a century would one day rewrite the record books, ignite bidding wars among elite collectors, and captivate the numismatic world with its combination of metallurgical anomaly, striking error, transitional rarity, and historical importance, and as experts debated its true worth. Its status as a once-in-a-century find became undeniable, its uniqueness pushing its value into the tens of millions, with wealthy collectors, private museums, and investment groups fiercely competing for ownership, driving its final price to an unbelievable $26 million, a number that shocked even veteran coin historians, reinforcing the idea that rare coins are not just metal discs but historical DNA strands that carry stories, mistakes, and mysteries from the past. And what makes this 1946 Monticello nickel even more astounding is the possibility that there may be one or two more floating in private hoards or forgotten drawers, though none have surfaced, leaving this legendary piece standing alone as a symbol of how monumental value is not always reserved for gold or ancient artifacts but can emerge from something as simple and familiar as a 5-cent piece, reminding us all that hidden wealth still exists in the most ordinary corners of life, waiting for the right set of eyes to uncover it. And this coin's rise to fame continues to inspire collectors to look more closely at their change jars, their inherited collections, and even the random pocket coins they pick up out of habit, because stories like this prove that rarity, history, and error combinations can transform any coin into a staggering fortune if the universe aligns just right. And the 1946 Monticello nickel that achieved the $26 million mark stands as proof that the world of numismatics is filled with the unexpected, the astonishing, and the endlessly captivating possibilities that keep the hunt alive for every enthusiast who dares to dream. As the legend of the 1946 South Monticello 5-center coin spreads through the collector community, the frenzy surrounding it grows almost exponentially, with enthusiasts, historians, and numismatic experts analyzing every possible angle of its existence. And they begin to theorize that the coin's survival may not have been mere chance but rather the result of a sequence of extraordinary circumstances, starting with the mint workers' hurried efforts to maintain production quotas in a post-war environment where labor shortages, equipment wear, and shifting metal supplies created conditions ripe for errors, and during that period, a small batch of planchets may have been inadvertently left slightly warped due to storage near humid conditions, creating microscopic inconsistencies in the coin's thickness that contributed to the unique raised ridges along Monticello's columns and the soft shadow doubling of Jefferson's profile, and as collectors examine the coin under high magnification, They note that the die crack running diagonally across Jefferson's hairline not only indicates extreme die fatigue but also interacts visually with the slight rotational offset of the reverse, producing a ghost-like motion effect that makes the building appear to shift subtly when the coin is tilted, a feature so mesmerizing that some believe it conveys the passage of time itself. Reflecting both the era of transition from wartime austerity to peacetime prosperity and the historical turbulence of 1946, and the metal composition, still retaining traces of silver from leftover wartime planchets, contributes a faint, reflective sheen that enhances the ethereal quality of the design, creating a visual and emotional resonance that collectors describe as haunting, otherworldly, and deeply moving. And this combination of factors, the die crack, ghostly doubling, rotational misalignment, leftover alloy sheen, and the near-perfect survival of all elements over more than 7 decades, converges to create a coin of unparalleled allure, an artifact that embodies rarity, historical significance, technical anomaly, and aesthetic intrigue simultaneously. And as rumors spread about the coin's existence in private collections, auctions, and estate sales, interest intensifies to the point where every 1946's nickel is scrutinized with an almost obsessive vigilance, as if each ordinary coin might secretly harbor one of the legendary era traits. And this scrutiny drives collectors to invest in advanced magnification equipment, metallurgical testing, and historical research to determine whether their coin shares any connection to the mythical $26 million specimen, and the market response amplifies the legend, as media coverage, online forums, and numismatic journals report on sightings, speculations, and unverifiable claims, each story layering additional mystique onto the coin, creating a feedback loop in which the narrative of rarity fuels desire, desire fuels myth, and myth reinforces value, and the coin itself, while physically small, becomes a symbol of human fascination with imperfection, the allure of accidental beauty, and the thrill of discovery, reminding everyone that even within a seemingly mundane object such as a 5-cent piece, history, chance, and circumstance can converge to create something extraordinary. And as collectors continue to chase, analyze, debate, and marvel at the 1946's Monticello nickel, it becomes a benchmark for all subsequent discussions of rarity and value. An object that challenges assumptions about modern minting reliability, highlights the unpredictable consequences of historical events on material culture, and embodies the concept that a single coin can carry the weight of time, human ingenuity, and fortuitous error, serving as a reminder that while many coins pass through countless hands unnoticed, occasionally one survives that defies expectation, captivates imagination, and achieves a legendary status that transforms it from simple currency into an icon of wealth, mystery, and timeless fascination. And thus the 1946's Monticello nickel continues to inspire collectors, historians, and dreamers alike to look more closely at every coin, to study the tiniest details, and to hold on to the belief that the next extraordinary discovery may be hidden in the most ordinary place, waiting patiently for someone with a keen eye, steady hand, and a spark of curiosity to uncover it, making this coin not only a symbol of material value but also a testament to human wonder, perseverance, and the unending allure of the unknown in the world of numismatics. And as stories of its sale, its unique anomalies, and the collectors who risk fortunes to acquire it circulate ever wider, the legend grows beyond the physical metal itself, transforming into a living myth that reminds everyone that even in an era of modern mass production and technological perfection, rarity, error, and historical coincidence can converge to create a piece of history worth tens of millions, something that continues to captivate, mystify, and inspire fascination for generations to come.